Philippines is facing one of the most powerful storms in recent years. Super Typhoon Uwan, known internationally as Owen, made landfall along the northeastern coastline, striking with sustained winds near 185 kilometers per hour and gusts reaching 230. A massive wall of wind and rain engulfed coastal towns, tearing through communities and plunging entire regions into chaos. The National Weather Agency issued its highest warning level as the storm carved a path of destruction across the archipelago. The eye wall crawled slowly over coastal settlements, uprooting coconut trees and hurling metal roofs high into the air. Transmission towers bent under the pressure, and entire provinces were left in darkness after power grids collapsed. Communication lines snapped one after another, isolating towns and villages from the rest of the country. Roads disappeared beneath fallen trees, overturned vehicles, and scattered debris. Firefighters described the air as filled with flying fragments of metal and wood, making every movement dangerous. Electricity was cut for hours as emergency teams struggled to assess the full extent of the damage. Across the shoreline, buildings swayed under the force of sustained winds that few had ever witnessed before. More than 1 million people had been ordered to evacuate before the storm arrived. Families with small children, the elderly, and those with limited mobility were taken to temporary shelters in schools, gymnasiums, and municipal halls. Rows of woven mats covered the floors while volunteers handed out bottled water and warm food. Mothers held crying children close as the sound of the storm echoed against concrete walls. Outside, wind howled like a freight train. Despite exhaustion, many evacuees expressed quiet relief that they had followed evacuation orders in time. For those who stayed behind, the night became a fight to survive. Floodwaters rose quickly, forcing residents to climb onto rooftops or upper floors as rescuers struggled to reach them. Emergency hotlines were overwhelmed by calls for help coming from multiple provinces at once.
Trời lạnh lắm.
Hiện tại là chia cấp hết là người có ở đây đây. Cấp hết rồi là chia đưa người.
Rescue operations began before dawn. Firefighters, police units, and local volunteers moved through flooded neighborhoods using boats and high-clearance vehicles. Medical teams set up mobile clinics near evacuation centers to treat injuries and prevent outbreaks of waterborne disease. The Department of Social Welfare coordinated with the National Disaster Risk Reduction Council to deliver relief goods and assess damaged infrastructure. Officials urged evacuees not to return home until authorities declared the area safe. Across radio networks, repeated warnings reminded the public that the danger had not passed even as the storm's eye moved inland. Helicopters hovered over isolated communities to drop food packs where roads were no longer passable. Despite continuous rainfall and poor visibility, rescue crews pressed on, pulling people from submerged homes and carrying elderly residents through knee-deep water.
Trời ơi, bơi, bơi, bơi! Trời ơi, trôi chứ con! Như là treo bờ tường đi. Đấy, cẩn thận con. Kéo bồ trớn bồ đấy. Đấy, treo bờ tường để đi.
When the winds finally began to weaken, the scale of destruction came into view. Rivers overflowed their banks, sending muddy water cascading through streets and into houses. Entire farmlands disappeared under brown floodwater. Meteorologists estimated that some regions received more than 200 millimeters of rain in less than one day. In mountainous provinces, landslides buried roads and severed access to remote villages. Farmers watched helplessly as rice fields ready for harvest lay flattened and drowned. Fishing boats anchored along the coast were torn from their moorings, smashed against rocks, or swept inland by the storm surge. Livestock pens and barns collapsed under relentless gusts, leaving families without both income and food supply. In low-lying coastal zones, waves as high as houses crashed through seawalls and flooded entire neighborhoods. Airports and seaports suspended operations while hundreds of flights were canceled nationwide. Major highways were blocked, fuel deliveries delayed, and communication networks remained unreliable. The country entered a logistical standstill as relief convoys attempted to navigate through the wreckage. Authorities emphasized that the danger would continue even after skies began to clear. Flash floods and secondary landslides could still occur as the ground remained saturated. Residents were warned not to enter damaged houses or cross flooded roads. Psychological stress was evident in every shelter. Volunteers comforted evacuees who broke down in tears after learning that their homes had been destroyed. Despite the chaos, countless small acts of heroism emerged. Neighbors shared food with strangers. Rescuers carried elderly people on their backs through the water. Young volunteers cleared debris from blocked roads to make way for ambulances. At night, families huddled together on cold floors, clinging to the hope that the storm's fury would soon end. The government pledged continuous support and long-term recovery aid once conditions allowed teams to move safely into devastated areas. For now, survival remained the only priority. As Super Typhoon Uwan continued to move westward across the Philippine Islands, millions of people waited for morning light, hoping that it would bring calm after one of the most powerful storms in the nation's history.